This is Venture, my 1996 Toyota T100 pickup. I bought it when I was 25. I've had it for 8 years now. She's been a good and faithful companion and more than a vehicle, and it's time to let her go. So I thought I'd take some time and just go through what this truck is, what I've done to it, what it means to me, and where to go from here. So to begin with, what is a Toyota T100? Well, in the late 80s, Toyota decided it wanted to get in on the full-size truck game after they'd completely dominated the compact truck world. So what they did was they took their, we call it a third generation truck. It's technically like a seventh generation, I think, or something like that. So they took their current Hilux pickup that they had manufactured from 1989 to 1996, and they just kind of set it to wumbo.
Oh, if only I knew how to work this thing.
Let me take a look at it. You know what the problem is?
What?
You got it set to M for Mini, when it should be set to W for Wumbo.
Patrick, I don't think wumbo is a real word.
Come on, you know. I Wumbo, you Wumbo, he, she, me, Wumbo.
They just made a bigger version of that. But then there were problems with the engines, so by 1995, they had decided to start putting the drivetrains that were later found in the Tacoma in them. So they're this odd mishmash of old and new. They're this quirky, compact, full-size truck that didn't do well, and it almost tanked Toyota's efforts to do a full-size truck, especially when the Dodge Ram came out with the larger style cab, and all of a sudden big and stupid became the way of American trucks. Yeah, it didn't do well. But it's a cool, it's just so special. You know, this era that it came from, Toyota's era, was the maverick age of Toyota. They had a mid-engine minivan, the Previa. They had the MR2. They had the T100. They were the last bastion of hope for manual transmission vehicles for a very long time. They were something unique and special, and you'll never get that again. This particular one, I am the second and fourth owner of this vehicle, which is an odd story. I bought it from my mechanic. For the price I paid for it, he did the timing belt, the clutch, the brakes, and a valve adjustment, and send me on my way. I ended up with this truck because at the time I had a 1983 Toyota four-wheel drive truck that had been my daily, and it broke down, and I decided I was going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and repaint it and just optimize it for my needs. So I went and I bought a used Corolla that was also a manual transmission, and the day after I brought that car home, I pulled into my driveway and went, I hate this car. I just don't like it. You know, I had this loan, I had to pay it off, so I worked hard and I paid that car off about a year early. And within a month of getting the pink slip in the mail, a guy rolled a stop sign and T-boned me, totaled it. Because Toyotas hold their values so well, I got almost the full value of that car back when my insurance company cut me a check. And I immediately went to my mechanic, and for the price I paid for this truck, it had been completely gone through. It's been this faithful, reliable companion. This is a rear-wheel drive truck. It's not four-wheel drive. It was a huge departure for me because I've always been into 4x4 trucks. But at the time, I had my 83 Hilux. I didn't need another 4x4. I needed a economical daily driver, and I wanted something that I could take onto trails to go backpacking while my 4x4 was down, and something that had the chutzpah to be able to flat tow my 4x4 places if I wanted to go, wheeling or something. And so I ended up with this. It has the 3.5 liter V6. This is going to be kind of a shock for some of you folks, but it has manual windows. It has a manual transmission. I took the vacuum loop out of the steering box, so that way it's more like heavy feeling steering. Let me go over some of the mods I did. In 2017, I lost my 4x4 truck to the California wildfires, and so I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna start building this up. So I built a big plate steel bumper on it. I lifted it 3 inches. I put oversized tires on, oversized, they're 31-inch tires as opposed to the factory 28s. I put a cheap limited slip diff in the rear. I put these lights all over it. These seats, I love them because the lever on them is like, it feels like a big ejection seat lever. These seats are mounted on seat rails from a Sprinter van, because van life. Oh, and over here, this is George. George is my Maneki Neko. He's supposed to be a charm that brings you financial success. He hasn't done that for me yet. I basically just made it into the best two-wheel drive truck it could be, for my buck. And it's been great. It's been an economical commuter. If I baby it, I get about 30 miles to the gallon. If I go camping, I have the camper shell in back that I can crash in. At the time when I bought it, I was working graveyard shift. I needed a place to stay sometimes because I would be so tired after work and I needed to crash somewhere. And so I would sleep in the bed. I kept camping gear in here. I had room for friends with the extended cab. I had room for camping gear. One of my favorite features of this truck was the fact that I had that locking camper shell, and so I could book it after work and get to a trailhead and then crash and sleep at the trailhead, get up the next morning, lock my camper shell and go. I didn't have to break camp. I didn't have to pack anything up. It was just, I had a little mobile home there. It was also more than a vehicle to me because I'm part of a generation of people who most of us will never own homes. The financial decisions of the generations before us have completely screwed us over. The closest thing I've ever had to a home of my own was this truck. I've rented rooms my entire life. I've never had my own home except for this. It was my shelter, it was my refuge, it was my adventure, it was a big part of my identity. Driving this truck, I get smiles and waves from all the other cool off-roaders with their built-up Jeeps and stuff, because they think this thing's some kind of contemporary, when really I could high center this sucker in a heartbeat. I've had so many wonderful adventures in this thing, and I've had so many great experiences and some shitty experiences. I've gotten it stuck a lot. I spent a lot of time building up these FJ62 Land Cruiser door mirrors for it, only to have one completely smashed to bits within the first month. For a two-wheel drive truck, I've gotten it all over the Mendocino National Forest. I've explored roads and trails that most people with stock Jeeps won't touch. I've been all over the El Dorado National Forest. I'm reasonably confident that with some planning, I could probably take this truck up the Rubicon. Not the hard obstacles, of course, because I don't have a transfer case, I don't have good traction, I don't have four-wheel drive, but I could still do some bunny hill stuff there. Been on so many backpacking trips with this, and it's been so nice just to have a little lightweight portable home I could go to anywhere. I went snow camping with my wife in it, and we got stuck in a ditch, and it was like midnight, and we were yanking ourselves out with a come-along winch in the snow. We finally got to a point where we just couldn't go any further, and we were tired, and we tried to camp out in the back and had this cold, miserable night. And then in the morning, we called the tow company, and originally AAA wasn't going to cover it because we were off a road, even though we were on a paved road up by Tahoe. And the tow truck driver came out. He was expecting us to be just completely buried, and he saw that we had yanked ourselves out of the ditch and was like, damn, you did the hard part for me. We backpacked the Lost Coast in it too. We got into the trailhead at night. We were up at the Black Sands Beach. And Black Sands Beach, officially, you're not supposed to camp there. But it was midnight. We'd just gotten off work. We'd booked it there. So we slept in the camper, and we were worried that we'd get in trouble. And daylight broke, and we stepped out, and immediately all these other people who had been dispersed camping around Black Sands Beach hiding came out too. And we were just all like, oh, this is just what people do. One of my favorite memories that I have of this truck, my wife and I decided to go for a drive on the coast. And we're going up this hilly road, and we saw something scuttling across and looked injured, and so we pulled over, and it was a newborn baby deer. It was injured, didn't know what to do, so we scooped it up and wrapped it up in my poncho and got in touch with a local fawn deer rescue. And we waited for a guy to come and pick it up. And it was just this like once in a lifetime experience. Another time, my wife and I got off work. I had this grand idea that we'd go and explore the Six Rivers National Forest. And we booked it all the way up 101 till it ended and became Highway 1. And then we hit 96, the Bigfoot Scenic Highway, Psalms Bar off the Salmon River, and slept in the back of the truck. And then in the morning we made apple pancakes. and went out to Fern Canyon, which is where they filmed some of the scenes for Jurassic Park: The Lost World. Afterward, we were too tired to make the trip back to Psalms Bar, and we found this little RV place in Trinidad. It's called Emerald Forest. It was so funny. We pulled into our spot, and we're next to this RV, and there's this younger guy. I wouldn't say he's a kid. He's probably like in his late teens. And he just saw like all my lights and all my mods and my Earthmate GPS here, my camper shell, and all the goofy shit I've done to this truck. And he was like, "Well, gee, are you an adventurer, mister?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am. Thanks for making me feel good about myself." Everything about this truck is just pleasant feeling. It's happiness on wheels. I can't not smile when I drive this truck. I just feel so connected to it. You know, modern cars are boring and numb and disinteresting. They're just computer desks on wheels. And this was something that, you know, it felt special. A bygone vehicle from a bygone age. And then in 2019, I got off work and I cranked the engine, and it cranked and stopped, and I knew something was wrong. And I scoped it, and the cylinder head had cracked, and it was allowing coolant into the combustion chambers. And at the time, my wife and I were expecting our daughter, and it was difficult. And I didn't make the decision easy for my wife, but we decided to trade it in. And it was painful. I sobbed like I'd just put down a pet. And then a few months later, it was on Facebook Marketplace. Someone had bought it, realized that it had a crack in the head, and was trying to flip it. And I horse traded a whole bunch of spare parts and garbage to a friend who fronted me the cash to buy it. It was a bad decision. It nearly ended my marriage because I went around behind my wife's back, and I'll never not feel guilty about that. I love this truck. It means the world to me, but it's time to let it go. I've never been able to repair that cracked cylinder head. I've been running on liquid head gasket for almost 3 years now, which is pretty nice, pretty fortunate, but there's just no room for it in my life. There will be another one someday. I'm looking forward to that, but not today. So I'm letting it go. I'm gonna start stripping it down, keeping all the cool mods that I can keep, and someday there'll be another T100. I've got grand plans, and you're gonna be seeing those plans pretty soon. I basically just did all of the fun stuff I could possibly do with this, and I love it. It's gonna be hard letting it go, but I love my daughter more, and I need a vehicle that isn't on the edge of death. Where do we go from here? How about
second start of the ride. And straight on till morning.
What was that?